12 rusted car frames dumped without a single word. Dropped on Isaac Marlow's lot because a short-sighted owner wanted free trash storage. The CEO behind this was Charlotte Vane, boss of the region's biggest car distribution empire. She never spared a second glance for the mechanic signing the delivery receipts. To her, he was just a small-town mechanic on a street corporate elites ignored. He had engine grease under his fingernails and a 6-year-old daughter holding onto a worn-out stuffed bear. To Charlotte, this shop was a graveyard, but she couldn't see its hidden value. Just 3 months later, his name dominated every single valuation sheet in her boardroom, but not as a supplier, but as a true visionary who found immense value in the junk she threw away. You and I know how the blind elite overlook real potential. Stay with me here. Isaac had been up working since 5:30. That was his standard routine. Ever since little Mia started school, his early mornings followed a quiet, focused schedule. A hot coffee on the workbench, quiet radio humming. With the garage door rolled halfway up, the cool, morning breeze swept through as he quietly planned his day's work. He ran a modest repair shop on Eldon Street. A simple brick building with 2 bays and a small lot that squeezed in 6 cars if packed tight. The weathered sign hanging above his door read, Marlow's Garage, written in bold letters that had faded over years to soft yellow. He never touched the paint, always claiming he was too busy turning heavy wrenches. But the real truth was his late wife Grace chose that exact shade of white. She believed it gave the shop a lasting, permanent feel, like a business built to survive. He had kept that sign untouched since her tragic accident exactly 3 years ago. Now 6, Mia wore neat braids and constantly narrated every little detail she observed. Every morning she brought her favorite stuffed bear, Biscuit, down into the garage. The bear had a left ear that almost got torn completely off during a rough patch in her 2nd year of life. Isaac carefully stitched it back using the heavy thread he reserved for car leather. To Mia, this fix proved her dad was magic. She proudly told her teacher her dad could repair literally anything, and she meant it. She believed in his talent completely, with the absolute trust only children possess. This morning she perched on her usual stool near the massive tool chest, drawing with a green crayon when she suddenly looked up at the vintage '68 Mustang Isaac was restoring on the lift. "Dad," she called out, "that car looks like an old grandpa taking a nap." Isaac chuckled from beneath the rear axle. "Yeah, that is about right." "Will it wake up?" "Give me 20 minutes. She considered that, then kept sketching. Luke Derry walked in at 7:15, holding 2 cheap coffees like he always did. From the corner station, bringing a frantic energy that had absolutely nothing to do with any real problem, and everything to do with his highly anxious personality. They had been close friends since age 15. Luke was the exact type of guy who filled peaceful silence with endless chatter like a loud, distracting radio. Not because he was truly scared, but because he couldn't recognize peaceful silence. "You and I know the type, right? Let's step inside." The Haverford account called again. Luke sighed, dropping his mug on the workbench. "They want to push the pickup to next Friday. Plus, I checked our receivables today. We really need to discuss that big Reynolds contract falling completely through." "I know about the Reynolds contract. That was 40% of next quarter." "I know, Luke. I'm just saying. I know exactly what you're saying." Isaac slid out from under the Mustang, wiping away grease, completely unfazed by what others saw as a crisis. "We have survived slow quarters before. We do solid work. That doesn't change." Luke opened his mouth, then shut it. He glanced at Isaac's little girl Mia sketching a smiley-faced car, before shooting another anxious look at her father. "You're awfully calm for a guy who just lost his biggest contract." "Stressing won't rebuild this carburetor," Isaac replied as Luke grabbed his cup. "You know, someday I'd love to see something actually manage to rattle you." That exact moment arrived 90 minutes later. A massive hydraulic flatbed rumbled up to the garage, and a tired delivery driver hopped out. He clutched his clipboard like toxic waste, eager to dump this worthless cargo as fast as possible. The guy was not hostile, but he clearly just wanted to finish this junk run. He verified Isaac's name and checked the shop's address, and shoved over a disposal order signed by some clueless corporate CEO who only saw scrap metal. It read disposal order number VG1204. Complete title transfer. written off by the company as nothing but worthless scrap units. The receiving garage took full responsibility for final processing and disposal. Isaac read the document twice, then stared back at the driver. No one called ahead. They never do with junk lots, the driver shrugged. You want me to drop them or not? Isaac studied the massive truck. He could make out beautiful, rusted silhouettes trapped beneath the heavy transport straps. He saw faded flashes of forgotten classic chrome beneath the smashed fenders and neglected frames of vintage cars. It had that chalky, lifeless look old paint gets after rotting in a salvage yard for decades. To that bored delivery driver and the wealthy executive who signed the paperwork. To the rest of the world. Everyone who dumped these 12 rotting car shells from a corporate lot onto his garage pavement. They only saw worthless, ugly trash. Just one final bureaucratic headache before hitting the scrap metal crusher. But where they saw waste, Isaac saw the very beginning of an empire. Luke walked out of the shop, hovering behind him, reading that brutal write-off notice over his shoulder. 12 cars, Luke muttered, complete junk, but Isaac just ignored him. He climbed onto the truck's dirty running board, locking his eyes on that very first wreck. A classic American muscle car, buried under so much grime you could not even guess the original color. He traced the rusted roofline. He studied the dented curve of the rear quarter panel. He hopped back down. Offload them, he ordered. Luke completely froze. Drop them all, Isaac repeated, turning back to grab his heavy flashlight. Stick with me here. For 40 minutes he conducted an inspection most people would call a total waste. Isaac walked the line of those 12 junked vehicles, taking his sweet time examining each forgotten classic. Checking a rusty door seam or a hidden chassis number, he saw pure gold beneath the grime. Isaac pressed his thumb against the body panel, searching for that hidden weakness others would miss. The telltale sign of cheap filler over real steel. He did not need to write a thing down. You and I are watching a true visionary. He listened the way only real experts can, with hands that know the secrets of broken machines. He bypassed simple hearing, tapping directly into pure mechanical intuition. A sixth sense forged from 10,000 hours of finding gold in piles of scrap. Spotting the difference between timeless quality and cheap steel designed to fake its strength. His daughter Mia followed him outside. Holding her toy, Biscuit, she kept her distance. She watched her dad study those ruined vintage cars, knowing he saw treasure where others saw trash. Then, Isaac stopped dead right in front of the 11th vehicle. A low-slung coupe, its faded black coat aged to a deep murky green. That is when Mia stepped right up next to him. Dad, she whispered. These cars look sad like Biscuit did before you fixed his ear. Like they are just waiting for someone. Isaac looked down at her small face. Yeah, he whispered. That is about right. He signed the delivery receipt with absolute confidence. The flatbed rolled away. Later that night, once Mia had eaten and fallen asleep with Biscuit tucked safely under her arm, Isaac clicked on a harsh overhead bulb, opened a fresh page, and began sketching his future automotive empire. The very first project on his list was a legend, a 1969 Dodge Charger muscle car. The engine bay was completely hollow, but the frame remained rock solid. More importantly, the vehicle identification number was pristine and entirely untouched. He quickly ran the numbers across 3 registries. This rare Charger rolled off the assembly line in late September 1969. First sold to a Tennessee race team, it quietly passed through 2 collectors over the next decade, before completely vanishing from all official records in the early 1980s. The engine had been pulled, but the work was incredibly clean and deliberate. Every mounting bolt was removed evenly, leaving no damaged threads or signs of force. A professional had preserved the heavy power plant, storing it with absolute care. Isaac walked to the back of the salvage car and popped the rusted trunk. Hidden beneath the spare tire, wrapped in an old, oil-soaked cloth that had hardened like cardboard over decades, lay rare hidden components that perfectly matched the original factory engine specifications. We can see the pattern here. Nobody stole that motor, they preserved it right inside. The next diamond in the rough was a 1971 Ferrari Dino 246 GT, its Italian paint almost entirely gone. Faded red blotches clung to the lower panels, like a roadmap to a forgotten treasure. But the steel chassis, absolutely flawless. Isaac ran a precision straight-edge flush against the rusted rocker panels. He scanned the firewall, checking for hidden heat damage. He checked the floor pans for ripples, those clear structural warnings that reveal if a car ever survived a high-speed crash. Nothing. This high-value masterpiece had never been in a single serious accident. The surface coat had not bubbled or charred from intense heat. It was simply left in the damp, neglected, and exposed to moisture, causing the outer shell to slowly peel away. A temporary decay of the surface, while the priceless foundation beneath silently waited. He carefully documented the official factory plate. He checked those engine numbers against an elite registry, maintained by a highly exclusive circle of collectors in northern Italy. Every digit matched. This was an authentic gold mine, not a replica. We are looking at one of fewer than 300 Dino 246 GT models ever built for North America. Most saw basic stock, but a true expert spotted the rare custom cabin. A masterpiece designed for a very exclusive American import deal. Isaac knelt there, looking past the rust to find the hidden treasure. Let's inspect Car 11 together, that dark coupe with the undeniable pedigree. He rescued it because its flawless lines instantly proved the official papers were false. The outer shell claimed one era, but the frame told a priceless story. He ripped away the dirty mat on the driver's side. Then he ran his bare fingers under the door frame. His hands found a hidden metal plate, definitely not a cheap factory tag. It was a small stamped badge welded by a builder who understood its value. He photographed the serial number, running the rare code through his computer. The screen flagged a match in a private registry of priceless prototype designs. He checked the rare listing 3 times. Then he read the valuable specs again. He scanned the shop, seeing gold where everyone else only saw 11 rusted wrecks. He stared at his daughter's green crayon drawing of a smiling car, taped next to the old radio. He wrote 2 simple words in his greasy notepad: do right. He closed his notepad, switched off the shop light, and sat in the dark, charting his next moves. Charlotte Vane had run her family's massive automotive empire for exactly 14 months. More than enough time to spot real potential. She kept shaking up the old guard, though some boardroom traditionalists still doubted her. They expected her to fold and repeat their outdated business mistakes. At age 29, her pulled-back hair showed she was completely focused on results. She effortlessly projected the focus of a true visionary leader. This empire was her home. Her own father once ran the entire enterprise. Her grandfather built it from scratch. She understood the car market deeply, having watched the biggest deals unfold from the back of executive boardrooms. High-level strategies were decided way before the average technician ever heard about them. She cleared out the storage yard only because her top manager, Jason, insisted. You know the type, sliding the papers over with a smug, patronizing smile. He wanted to make her look foolish if she didn't throw them out. He claimed those old assets would hurt their company before the big stock launch. To his blind eyes, the cars were junk, the papers said so. Getting rid of the scrap seemed easiest, so she signed the release immediately. But 2 days later, her sharp instincts drew her down to Eldon Street. Jason claimed they needed to inspect the garage to ensure regulatory compliance. But honestly, her inner vision was sparked by the name Marlow's Garage. It had a single bad grade from a bitter supplier trying to bury it. But real drivers saw its true worth, leaving endless glowing reviews online. They praised him as a rare, honest expert who truly understood the craft. Stick with me here. Her business mind filed that asset away for later. Soon, she was riding with Jason, cruising slowly down the block. They approached Eldon Street, though she knew there was real potential waiting there. Inside, Isaac was wiping dark oil from his hands on a rag. He didn't look like someone who ignored true value. You and I know real value when we see it. Charlotte didn't. She judged Isaac instantly with the smug arrogance of a typical corporate executive. Ordinary height, dark hair. But his hands showed real hard work, not some soft corporate gym. In the corner, his daughter sat quietly with her teddy bear, drawing on a notepad. Charlotte looked around the shop, shocked it wasn't the dirty junk pile she expected. Looking through the side door, she eyed the edge of his salvage lot. 12 rusted, broken cars sitting in complete ruin. I need to make sure these are handled properly, she demanded. They are insurance write-offs. You cannot resell them. Isaac just stared back, calm and steady. The transfer papers were already signed. I understand what I received, Isaac said as Jason stepped forward. Jason was 54, thick-necked and slick. He used his expensive tailored suit like a weapon to look down on everyday working people. We need to make absolutely sure you understand the rules on those cars. They are meant for scrap, not for retail. I understand that completely, Isaac replied, his voice calm. The little girl stopped drawing and looked up. Hi, she said. Want to see my drawing? I drew one of the cars out there. Charlotte just stared. It was a rough drawing of a vintage car with a giant sad face on the hood. Right next to the bumper, she drew a little stick person. That tiny stick figure was holding a huge wrench. That is very nice, Charlotte muttered, trying to fake the warmth of a wealthy elite who hates kids. She turned instantly back to Isaac. You keep your kid here at the shop. I do, he said. How practical, she replied. She did not care how cruel she sounded, her words hanging like a cold corporate insult. It was not aggressive anger. Honestly, it was something much worse than that. It was the classic blind spot of the wealthy. They look at a hard-working family and see nothing but poverty, missing the real potential. To them, he was just a poor mechanic grinding in a messy shop with a kid nearby. Practical as if he had no other choices in life, Isaac stayed silent. He stared back at her for one quiet second, then calmly looked away. Deep in the shadows of the quiet garage, his mechanic Luke tightened his grease-stained hand around a massive steel wrench. Mia tugged on her father's dirty sleeve and whispered softly to him. That lady looked at those cars the same way the kids at school look at my old toy, like she does not know what they are for. 5 minutes later, those arrogant corporate executives finally drove away. The little girl watched their expensive luxury car drive away from the shop. Those cars are actually beautiful, Dad, she mumbled. She just did not look close enough. Isaac knelt down to look her in the eyes. Most people do not, sweetheart. Stick with me, because this is where the magic happens. At 11 p.m. he uncovered a hidden serial number under the 11th car's dusty mat. A quick search confirmed a legendary long-lost automotive industry secret. This supposed pile of scrap was actually an incredibly rare factory prototype. To be precise, it was Unit 11 of only 17 rare prototypes built internally by the massive Vane Automotive Company in 1973, trying desperately to win a major contract. That contract went elsewhere, but you and I know the truth. He found pure gold. To those blind suits, the project was just dead weight. But you and I know better. Those discarded prototypes were scattered, trashed, or handed to executives. Over the decades, the blind corporate machine let all records vanish. That faded stamp on the metal plate, the original production code, it matched their archive files exactly. I looked up a recent auction sale for a vehicle from that same prototype run. Unit 7 of 17, missing paperwork, incomplete history, and a badly damaged chassis. 14 months ago in London, that exact scrap fetched $940,000. But the discarded unit sitting in my shop was perfect. The frame was straight. Even the original spec sheet was intact, tucked under the floor mat in a laminated sleeve. By any realistic market valuation, its actual value sat between $1.1 and $1.4 million. I stared at that massive figure. The legal title was in my name. All the transfer papers were already signed and filed. By every strict legal standard, those 12 abandoned treasures were my absolute property, free and clear to do with as I pleased. My thoughts drifted back to Grace. Years ago, she shared something vital. She was never worried I would fail at this business. She was terrified I would lose my vision. Back then, I did not truly understand. Now the vision was clear. I opened a fresh file on my laptop. Over the next 2 hours, I compiled a 34-page asset report covering all 12 vehicles. Photos, detailed condition notes, and historical proof for each. Real market values pulled from 3 independent auto databases. Plus a complete copy of the transfer papers, stamped with Vane Automotive Group's signature. You and I know strategic leverage. I wrote no accusations or demands. I printed a single physical copy, sealed it in an envelope, and locked it in my drawer. I kept that valuable file entirely to myself. 3 quiet days went by. On the 4th morning, a sleek corporate sedan rolled up. Definitely not one of my usual garage customers. CEO Jason Holt stepped out alone. He strolled in uninvited, scanning my empire like he was cataloging garbage. He spoke before I could even say hello. There was an error in that disposal order, Marlow. We need the entire lot back. I calmly set down the engine part I held. Those transfer documents were absolutely valid. I understand, but certain valuable assets in that group were never supposed to be included. Holt spoke with the calculated calm of a man who believed he held all the power. That quiet corporate pressure is always far more effective than open aggression. We want to resolve this quietly, for absolutely everyone's benefit. I am not really sure I understand what exact benefit you mean. He stared me down. You run a tiny auto shop here, you have a daughter. You want to keep running this business without any sudden complications. I think you hear what I am saying. I just stared right back, unblinking. Then I casually glanced up at the corner of my shop, right where a small security camera had been silently rolling since spring. You will appreciate this. I installed that safeguard after a theft 2 years ago. I looked right back at Holt, smiling. You just threatened me. I told him, right in front of my security camera. I think you get exactly what I'm saying. Jason's mask slipped, and his fake smile vanished completely. He glared at the camera, locked eyes with me, and walked out. Our lawyers will be in touch, he snapped. Fine by me, I replied. Once his car pulled away, Luke leaned back, letting out a long breath. You need to explain to me what is actually going on. I am sending an email, I said, sliding into my chair. The message to Charlotte Vane was brief, only 4 sentences. I warned her to get the facts on this valuable fleet before her legal team made a massive mistake trying to crush us. I demanded a face-to-face meeting, no more dealing with corporate middlemen. I made it clear that I was ready whenever she was. I left my phone number and clicked send just before noon. I did not check my phone again for the entire shift. Around 4, my daughter Mia walked in, her hands covered in bright pink and blue sidewalk chalk. She looked up at me with that perfect confidence kids have when they know things will work out. Dad, she asked, are you worried about those broken cars? Not at all. I told her, I am just focused on doing this the right way. Is there a bad way? There is an easier way, I admitted. That is not the same. She thought about that for a second. Okay. She grabbed a juice box and left. That weekend I got to work. Not because of some deadline, but because I needed massive leverage for my eventual meeting with Charlotte Vane. I wanted to show her undeniable value, not just empty arguments. You and I know real value requires sweat. Luke and I worked 40 hours, restoring 3 of those classic machines. The vintage Charger roared back to life, giving me absolute chills. We cleaned those forgotten engine parts and carefully fit them together. Secured with the original factory hardware, the motor fired up on the second try. It was not that loud, cheap roar that people who do not understand classic muscle cars usually expect. It was deep, heavy, and perfectly settled. A powerful vibration rattled the concrete floor, shaking me right up through my boots. That beautiful rumble lasted for exactly 5 seconds before I cut the engine. Mia had run in from the office, hands over her ears, wearing a massive smile. The car woke up, she cheered. It certainly did, I smiled. I did not fully rebuild the vintage Ferrari. I just secured its priceless core. I gave the body a deep clean and sealed the metal against rust. Then I applied a fresh coat of primer matched exactly to the original factory code. Others saw worthless scrap, but standing there I saw the foundation of a massive empire. Its iconic, legendary silhouette was completely unmistakable. Even Luke, a guy who never cared about exotic Italian cars, just stood there staring at it in complete silence. But the crown jewel, that rare prototype, I left it completely untouched. I simply wiped it down with a cloth and parked it under the brightest lights in the bay. I captured detailed photos of its exact untouched condition. I pulled out the original factory spec sheet, still sealed in plastic. I slipped it safely into the folder with my other paperwork. I printed the final appraisal, 34 pages proving this was pure gold. You and I know that undeniable proof is everything. I attached a 4-page summary ready for my signature. True empires start with vision, not raw cash. Sunday night, Charlotte Vane finally emailed back. Just one line, Monday morning, 9 a.m., my office. Isaac showed up at 9 sharp, wearing the neat, simple clothes he saved for important moments. He left his boy at home, carrying only a folder full of hidden gold. Vane Automotive occupied 5 high floors of a towering downtown glass skyscraper. The highest floor was the CEO's personal power center. An assistant led him into a massive boardroom, where giant windows looked down on a city of blind eyes. It was a classic intimidation tactic, pure and simple. Completely unfazed, the visionary mechanic sat by the glass and waited. Charlotte swept in minutes later, poured some water, and sat right across from the man she underestimated. She got straight to the point. "You said there are things I should know." He quietly opened his folder and slid the gold mine across the table. She scanned the cover page, a neat list of 12 junk cars others saw as scrap. She turned to the next page, expecting nothing but garbage. The room stayed dead silent while Isaac watched her read every detail. He saw the exact moment her eyes hit page 8, revealing the gleaming prototype rebuilt from scrap, and she froze. She stared hard at the impossible proof. She studied the spec sheet next to it, recognizing the rare production code and her family's founding signature. "Where did you find this?" she whispered. "Buried under the floor mat of the 11th junk car." That laminated sleeve was still fused to the bottom of the sill. She checked the photo again. "This is," she paused, "Unit 11 of 17. Isaac nodded. "The legendary pre-production test series from 1973. That spec sheet is authentic. The chassis is totally untouched and structurally flawless. The official archive records are fully cited on page 9. Charlotte flipped to page 9, absorbed the truth, then turned straight to the valuation section. She read the staggering appraisal, but her trained poker face never cracked. "You and I know that cold CEO glare, but something major shifted in her eyes. "You've sat on these vehicles since last month," she stated. I knew what I had by week 2. She finally looked up from the documents. "You could have auctioned every single one. Your salvage paperwork was completely legal." "Yes, why didn't you cash out?" He thought about Mia and Biscuit. He remembered his late wife, Grace, and the deep truths she had shared that he only understood now. He pictured the 2 words he had scribbled in his greasy notebook: hidden value. Standing alone in the garage at 2 a.m., shining a flashlight on 12 forgotten treasures. "Because that prototype bears your name," he said. "Literally, your family hand-built it. Whatever I did with the other scraps, that legendary machine belonged with you." He paused. "And because flipping a masterpiece for fast money means becoming a man I never want to be." The powerful CEO sat in stunned silence. She turned to the very last page, reviewing a partnership proposal with 3 simple paragraphs. She began reading his terms. Suddenly, the boardroom door swung open. Jason Holt barged right in. "Let's step into Holt's shoes." He entered the room expecting an easy victory, but froze when he saw a supposed nobody sitting across from his boss, holding all the cards. "Charlotte," Holt stammered, "I really think we need corporate legal involved before." "Jason." She didn't even look up from the mechanic's master plan. "Please wait outside." "Please wait outside," she suddenly cut him off. She repeated it softly. "You and I both know a quiet boss is far deadlier than a screaming one." Jason hesitated in the doorway, completely frozen. He glared at me, burning with pure resentment. It was the look of a corporate suit realizing I had the leverage, and he couldn't stop my next move. He backed out, closing the door. Charlotte kept reading my custom contract addendum. She set it aside. "You're proposing to return Unit 11 voluntarily," she said, "on the condition that it joins the company's heritage collection. Not for auction and not to a private buyer. You're proposing to keep the remaining 11 and continue the restoration. And you're offering us first right of purchase on each car at verified market value." "Correct." And the third item, she tapped my final paragraph. "A formal restoration contract for the company's legacy asset inventory. 3 years, scope of work defined clearly with reasonable terms." I stared right back. "I'm not here to take anything. I'm here to propose something that builds value for both of us." Charlotte studied me in silence for a long moment. The sun warmed my back. She finally saw me as an equal, very different from when I was just a guy in a small shop. She took me seriously now. "Why did Jason visit your garage?" she asked. "He claimed the disposal order was a mistake and tried to claw back the vehicles. When I pointed out the paperwork was legally valid, he threatened that my ability to run my business in this area depended on my cooperation." "In front of your camera. In front of my camera." She sat quietly for a moment, then she said, "I'm sorry about that." 3 simple words, no corporate spin, just real, earned respect. I nodded. "1, she said. "Agreed. Item 2, fair. Item 3. She paused. "I want to discuss the scope in more detail, but first." She snapped the folder shut and placed both hands on the table. You had the legal right to walk away with more wealth than most see in 10 years, yet you came here to build. I want to understand why. I took a slow, deep breath. See, this is the moment you and I choose between corporate games or just telling the raw truth. My daughter asked me if I was going to fix those sad cars, I replied. I told her it depended on whether someone asked me the right way. I stared straight at Charlotte, and you just did. The chief executive held my gaze for a long moment. Then she did something I hadn't seen her do in any of our earlier meetings. She smiled, not the fake corporate grin she flashed my daughter earlier, but something real. It was genuine, as if she finally recognized the true value. She grabbed her notepad. We talked for 2 hours. 3 months later, my shop was still Marlow's garage. The sign above the door was still the same faded old white. Grace chose it because it made us look like an established business built to last forever. The walls were still brick. Those same 2 classic car bays remained, but inside hidden potential was fully unlocked and a brand new empire was taking shape. A third heavy lift stood ready. Look at the foundation of true success. New diagnostic gear lined the back wall, and 2 extra mechanics worked the morning shifts. He scheduled them for pure craftsmanship, refusing to rush. Outside, 9 classic cars sat, slowly turning from discarded scrap into absolute gold. 3 massive builds had already shipped. That classic Charger and 2 others commanded top-tier market prices. They split that revenue exactly as their ironclad contract dictated. The profit from those 3 restored gems easily crushed Isaac's previous 2-year income. He guarded that investment capital, refusing to waste a single cent except to pay off his equipment debt and patch up the roof over the back of the workshop, which had leaked since last autumn. Before this breakthrough, he had just survived on a cheap plastic tarp and stubborn grit. Stick with me here. The morning Unit 11 returned. Charlotte arrived after 9. Jason Holt was notably absent. Charlotte forced his resignation last month. A ruthless audit caught him slipping, which had sparked the moment the corporate board uncovered some incredibly damning paperwork. Instead, she brought her lead attorney and the head of their heritage division, a quiet specialist in his 60s named Arthur, who stared at the reborn masterpiece in the clean third bay, completely speechless for a full minute. We searched for this for 11 years, Arthur finally whispered. It was hiding under a floor mat, Isaac replied. Arthur stared. A floor mat? People only check the obvious spots, Isaac told him. The greatest treasures are always hidden, right where nobody bothers looking. Charlotte watched this quiet display of true vision from nearby. She held the transfer papers, ready to bring this priceless machine back into her corporate empire. Under the strategic lighting Isaac designed, the resurrected masterpiece gleamed. It looked precisely as the vintage archives proved it did when brand new. Low, fierce, and carrying that undeniable presence of a machine built to dominate. The original brass dashboard plate. Original factory upholstery, aged but flawless. That priceless original spec sheet, protected in plastic, finally returned to its founding dynasty. She signed her part of the deal. Isaac signed his. Arthur shook Isaac's hand with deep respect. The lawyer followed suit. Charlotte took his hand, holding it just a bit longer than business etiquette required, and whispered softly. Keeping her voice low, you could have exploited this for far more money. I know, he replied, and I won't forget that you didn't. He watched them go, seeing the heavy transport haul that billion-dollar treasure into the city. Luke joined him outside, sipping his coffee, eyes fixed on the exact same departing fortune. You all right with letting it go? Luke asked. Yeah. No regrets about not squeezing them for more? None, Luke nodded. All right. He paused, looking ahead. That Dino is nearly ready, I know. That machine is going to shock the industry, I know. They went inside. You and I know true empires take time. That night they sat outside. After dinner, enjoying the quiet evening with their dog Biscuit resting between them. Mia carefully stitched a loose button back onto Biscuit's tiny jacket, pulling the dark thread she insisted Isaac teach her how to weave last weekend. She worked slowly and precisely, showing the focus of someone intent on building something of genuine value. The black car is gone, she whispered. Went to a good place, Isaac told her. Mia gave a serious nod, the exact nod you give when you know your assessment is absolutely correct. Good, everything belongs where it belongs. Isaac watched his daughter, noting the intense absolute focus she used to secure that tiny button on her bear. It was the exact same focus she had watched him apply to worthless scrap metal since her childhood. He thought about Grace. He recalled the day those transport trucks arrived, when the driver blindly handed him a clipboard, treating those rare, rusted machines on the flatbed like worthless junk waiting to be liquidated. He remembered Charlotte's stunned face upon seeing the original automotive spec document photographed right in his garage, under his lights, uncovered by his own hands. He realized what it truly takes to spot raw potential. You and I know how easily he could have just sold those 12 cars, pocketed the cash, and moved on. No one would have known the difference, and nobody would have cared. Legally, the entire situation was fully on his side. But legality and building an actual legacy are rarely the same thing, and Isaac had spent too many years restoring discarded classic machinery to believe a vehicle can only be technically functional, yet fundamentally worthless at the exact same time. He made his choice alone in that dark garage at 2 a.m, staring at a notebook, next to a vintage photo, while his daughter's stuffed toy watched from the dusty windowsill. He decided that building a lasting automotive legacy mattered far more than grabbing a quick settlement check. Then came the contracts and the major restorations, followed by frantic phone calls from corporate headquarters. The morning Luke brought in that signed 3-year service contract, sat on the floor, and laughed with pure relief. Absolutely none of this was luck. Let's be clear, it was the result of knowing that true value is never decided by the fool throwing it away. Real empires are built by visionaries who recognize hidden potential. Nobody in the car industry remembers the exact date that contract was signed, and absolutely no outsider had been present when the defeated CEO stumbled out of the boardroom into the empty hallway, hands deep in his pockets, realizing his corporate empire was moving on without him. But the loyal mechanics at the shop, along with the clients who trusted them with their vehicles, and the locals who eventually heard the unbelievable story through the quiet word of mouth that builds honest reputations. They all knew an Eldon Street mechanic had once been handed worthless scrap, something highly valuable tossed away by blind executives, and he made the conscious choice to build something highly profitable with it, even when nobody else was paying attention. You and I know that is never the easy road. It certainly isn't the fastest, most obvious route, or what standard business schools teach. But it is the one path where, after a hard day, you can sit with your kid and proudly watch her fix a stuffed toy, knowing the business you built from scrap is a legacy she can inherit with pride. Mia tied off the thread, held her toy up, spun him around once, and nodded. Good, she announced, now he won't lose it again. Isaac just smiled. He stared up at the evening sky, which was doing the ordinary, beautiful thing it always does at the end of a hard-earned, irreplaceable day. Yeah, he smirked, seeing value. Now he won't.